Justice League Unlimited issue 2, Mark Waid writing with Dan Mora on the art. So yeah, lots of characters to juggle here. A lot of pressure on Waid, just based on the problems that we've had maybe in World's Finest, and even just that Action Comic story that he's been doing over the past 12 weeks. I'm happy to say that so far I'm enjoying this, and it feels like it's got a bit more of a direction than some of those other Waid books that we've been complaining about. But yeah, and Mora's art here looks a lot more like Mora's art to my eyes. With the coloring.
Me too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So yeah, parademons were in those eggs in Costa Rica that the Batman and Blue Beetle found. A team from the Justice League show up to fight them, which includes Superman, Star Sapphire, Mary Marvel, Black Lightning, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and Dr. Occult, apparently. I had to wait for them to tell me that, though, because I was never going to guess that. I was thinking, like, oh, is this, like, Jim Corrigan or someone? Like, who is this? That's what I was thinking.
Bro, the satchel and the fedora, and I went, it's Indiana Jones. Then I was like, wait, Warner Brothers doesn't have Indiana Jones, right? Oh, yeah, it's Dr. Occult, because I think Dr. Occult showed up in Batman versus Robin, if I remember, because I remember us having to look
him up. That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So December 2024, we're getting Dr. Occult in a Justice League book. Thank you, Mark Waid.
Yes, I mean, they said Unlimited and they meant it. They're pulling out all sorts of D-listers here to appear on the teams. So yeah, so they're fighting the parademons. Batman's there. He's kind of beat up. He's got slashes and blood all over him. He's like, yes, we found eggs and a nest, and yeah, go and deal with that. But there's also still missing kids. So Dr. Occult and Martian Manhunter, you go find the missing kids. Wonder Woman, Star Sapphire, or Mary Marvel, you go deal with the nest, and the others like protect the civilians. He's dishing out the orders. He's doing Batman stuff. We do briefly though cut to Singapore, where Atom Smasher gets his powers back because there's a villain using his powers to like rob stuff.
Or just a person, right? Because I think that it went to a.
Oh sure.
I think it's a random person, but yeah, he's
become a villain,
robbing up a bank and he's giant.
Yeah. He's a bad guy now because he's using the powers for bad things. But basically, the atoms there have got like a device that turns out is going to transfer the powers back because he gets close to him, and they zap the powers into this like sort of DNA looking device, and then zap it back into Atom Smasher. So yeah. All goes well, although they do point out that this is not a painless process. It's pretty rough, so they might have to try and keep working on it to make it better. This is like the 5th time they've done it, by the sounds of it. So
yeah,
that's fun. I appreciate that they showed us like Atom Smasher lost his powers, and obviously later on we're going to get another big reveal. Because one of my complaints before this issue is that it felt like other than one or two characters, almost no one had lost powers. At least this issue gave me a couple other ones because it felt like there was almost none. So that's fair. We don't really do much with Light Ray. Oh, not Light Ray. Airwave. That's
Airwave.
Airwave. We see him like eavesdropping on Mr. Terrific when he's talking to Red Tornado and Stargirl. But yeah, they're talking about the Inferno organization that were in the first issue. But that's it. There's not really much to it other than just he's there, he's listening.
Yeah, I think it's fun too that these are all essentially JSA characters too. So I feel like, where we're keeping sections throughout the Justice League Unlimited at this point. And then, Courtney, I feel like too, Stargirl kind of vouching along the lines because he was one of the returned sidekicks and stuff, right? So the fact that Wade's using that to continue this part of the story, I think is smart.
Yeah, so we go to Wonder Woman's Mary Marvel, who go to the nest and they're trying to like think about how to destroy it. And Mary Marvel says, "Oh, I could like strike it with lightning, but that would destroy the forest." And then they both say at the same time, "We should carry it into space." And then they both have like an awkward like moment of, "Huh, that was weird." And it's like, well, we're both speaking from the wisdom of various gods here. Maybe they're not so different. So we get a whole big thing here where they're flying up the ground all these eggs are on into the upper air, but then a giant parademon like comes for Mary and grabs her. So we get a bit of a fun action sequence there. I enjoyed their interactions here actually, just because since Mary Marvel is more tied to like like the almost the gods of the Wonder Woman side of the universe now, as opposed to what Shazam usually is. I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense for them to have a bit of back and forth.
And the idea that Athena and Minerva are the same, right? But one's Roman and one's Greek, and Mary's just like, oh, but they're the same person, and Diana's like, oh, you still have so much to learn about pantheons. I just like that. And if we can get that, Wonder Woman's kind of like Mary's almost like mentor in that way. I like that for legacy reasons. And yeah, so they sail that up. Mary gets pulled down by that massive parademon. And then we get to Manhunter and Dr. Occult.
I'm going to assume that this massive parademon is the mummy parademon that's laying all the eggs, I would assume. I've never really thought about the reproductive cycle of a parademon before until this issue, so I'm just spitballing here.
I just thought they just came out of Apocalypse,
Yeah, but those eggs are very xenomorph looking eggs with like they're just xenomorph eggs with like sort of boils on them.
Yes, they're pretty gross.
I mean, take from the best, I suppose, but worth mentioning. And then Martian Manhunter's with Dr. Occult, and they're looking for the kids. And Martian Manhunter reveals that when all the powers came back, he didn't get all of his back. He actually does not have his telepathy or any powers that are to do with his eyes. He still has flight and strength, and he still has shapeshifting, but he doesn't have some of the other ones. And it's like, okay, but he's been too scared to tell the Justice League about this thus far. So maybe there you go.
I was going to say, Jean is always the guy that they use his telepathy for everything. So right now that he doesn't have it, it would definitely, he feels like he's pretty useless, right? Because everyone else can kind of do what he can do, right? Superman has all those powers. So the fact that he's taking this so hard and he's afraid.
Which is kind of silly though, right? Because you still have super strength. You can still shapeshift. I mean, shapeshifting's pretty useful here. That's a very useful skill.
Yeah, but you feel like that's his defining thing, right? Is his telepathy. So the fact that he's taking this so hard and he's afraid to tell them, so he's just been kind of going, which again puts them at risk now too. Yeah. Because if they're counting on his telepathy for all this type of stuff, then yeah. But yeah, so I love this little character beat here between the two of them, and the fact that Dr. Occult figured out kind of who Martian Manhunter was because of the tie to his appearance with the doctor that had the heart attack, and he investigated that because it was something that was weird. So again, I love these little, history beats that Wade throws in there.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever read like the story of how Martian Manhunter originally came to Earth. So like having little teases of like that origin story was kind of obviously. You hear a lot about obviously his time on Mars and the Warring Martians and all that. I feel like I've never really read the story of no. This is how he actually arrived on Earth and those first experiences he had.
Have you not read New Frontier?
Oh no, I haven't actually.
Okay, so
I saw the animated movie once. I never read the book though.
So that's where I see it from. Is I've read it in New Frontier,
but that's not. I mean, obviously that's its own like separate thing because it's this like I don't know if I've ever read an in continuity take on it. I guess.
Gotcha.
But yeah, anyway, so Mary Marvel uses her lightning to strike down the big parademon. It turns out Black Lightning was helping as well with some extra voltage. So, they have that. Whereas Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult find a parademon who can speak. It's not just a mindless thing. And there's some of these, and he says, I was one of the first that was given sentience and intelligence so that I could kind of run things down here. And they're very, very upset. Because he's like, oh yeah, Darkseid's going to be so pleased when I come home and tell him that I've grew our legions down here and I've done this and that. I've got a bunch of like warriors because that's what they're going to use to kidnap children for, is to turn them into warriors, which makes sense because that's what Darkseid does with like Mr. Miracle and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's Granny Goodness's thing.
Yeah. So Martian Manhunter's like, hey, Darkseid died, bro. And he's like, no! What's so funny is he believes it instantly. He doesn't even like doubt it for a second. He just immediately goes, no, my Darkseid! Yeah,
it shows that kind of how mindless in devotion the parademons are.
And he's like, no, it's not fair. Yada yada. So yeah, he attacks Jean. Jean fights back. And the big plot point here really is that Jean shapeshifts into the parademon, so he looks right back at himself. and then starts beating the shit out of him, and he's basically just punching him to death until the lasso comes in and like grabs his arm back, and Superman and Diana are like, "Hey, this isn't you, Jean. We have to have a talk in the Watchtower about this." And Jean flies off invisible to get away from them. And I actually really like the final panel where he just seems to be in like the Arctic or something, and you can just kind of see the vague shape of him because the snow's hitting his invisible self. That's a really cool visual.
Yeah.
He just looks sad. He's just sort of depressed, and it's like, oh, because it feels like he's not just sad about losing his powers. There's something more to this, surely, because he feels like he's really the fact that he's getting so angry that he's almost. I know it's a parademon, but the fact that he's like letting violence kind of like dictate what he's doing feels very like a big deal here. So I really appreciate that we're getting some character beats and development for characters that don't normally have their own book. We're getting some development for Jean Jones, and maybe we can get like a cool Martian Manhunter arc out of this, where I think that's cool. We get to focus on some other characters, which is the appeal of having a book where it can literally be anyone in the DCU that's in the Justice League.
And so what I like here too is that Superman's saying that Colt told us what John told him, and that why he would hide it, I'm not sure, but there's something wrong with our friend, and we need to figure it out. Something bad. So I like that too. That's the approach that Superman's going at it from. It's like, let's figure this out because he's our friend, and not just he's a piece of this team, that we need right. Is that he's in pain? We need to figure out why.
Yeah, and that last panel really sells it. Like, I think it's really weird, and maybe this is a reason why an artist shouldn't be doing 2 books in a month. But this art in this book is much, much nicer than the other Dan Mora book. And again, part of it may just be the coloring, because we maybe theorized that's what the main problem was. But everything about this, like Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult going into the cave, which is dark, but Occult's lighting up with this rune that he's got that's making everything bright. Like, just that contrast between the darkness and the bright is really good there.
And it's very noirish, right? The way they explain with the shadows. And just both of these characters, right? Martian Manhunter is usually a detective, and you have Dr. Occult who's a detective. So, we're really edging towards the strengths of those characters. And yeah, just Moore's killing it on here. So to read Superman and then this back to back, I got a little bit of whiplash.
Yeah, just like the moments between Mary and Wonder Woman were pretty cool. I think the ending with Martian Manhunter in the snow is really just a great visual and really sells this idea that even though he's on his own, he's still staying invisible, so he can't be seen, even though he doesn't need to be. Just sort of says so much about what he's feeling right now. So there's like stuff that's being implied, and definitely so far we're only 2 issues in, but this definitely feels like it's got a lot more of a focus and like more of like a sort of like main story that's going for, versus those other WAID books where it feels like he was just, I mean, World's Finest is ongoing, his action arc just ended, but with World's Finest especially, it feels like he's just kind of there to have fun, and nothing ever feels like it really matters that much. Whereas this, it feels like there's a direction in mind, and I think it's this thing that's been missing from World's Finest that has become more clear now that we're like 30 plus issues into that, and it's like we kept this is a fun arc, and we'll get to like a proper story after, but he's still just doing fun arcs and one shots and just playing with things. And I don't know if you've read World's Finest from last week yet, but it wasn't.
I did.
Yeah, it wasn't that good. It was like it should have fine. It should have been better.
Yeah,
it should have been better. So, yeah, very good. What are you giving Justice League Unlimited issue 2?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with that, actually. Yeah, not quite the 9, but I think stronger than the 8 for the character beats, and particularly like the development that we get with Jean towards the end, I think is actually very intriguing. So credit to the book for like giving us some more interesting focused stuff, yet somehow not really addressing the cliffhanger from the last issue. That's just sort of there to linger now, and we always know that Airwave's up to something whenever he's about. But yeah, so far so good.